Hello, nice to meet you. We are from Hanul Family Alliance, and we would like to begin our presentation on cultural considerations for working with the Korean community, a guide for APS service providers. So first of all, nice to meet you. We'd like to introduce you to the Hanul Family Alliance. We are well known as Korean American Senior Center in the older Korean community. We were founded in 1987 in Chicago by Dr. Thomas Kim. And our agency has been growing ever since. We rebranded as Hanul Family Alliance in 2006 to emphasize that we serve clients of all age groups, all communities. We have three offices, one in Chicago, one in Mount Prospect, suburban Cook County, in Lincolnshire, in Lake County. We have been serving older immigrants and their families in Chicagoland for more than 37 years. We are one of the biggest Korean ethnic direct service providers in the Midwest. We provide a wide array of services, including in-home care, which is community care, immigration support, public benefits application assistance, Medicaid and Medicare counseling, mental health counseling, mental health education, congregate dining programs, home delivered meals, community health, education, and many more. And we would like to thank AgeOptions for making this presentation available. This presentation was made available through AgeOptions TCLIP APS Outreach Presentations Funding. And before we begin, I just want to note that the cultural considerations and suggestions offered here are based on our research and our own experience working as a direct service provider to the first generation, mostly South Korean American community in Chicagoland. So this presentation is intended to serve as reference only and is not a definitive one-size-fits-all description of the community. So we would like to talk about the Korean Americans in the United States and understanding the Korean American community in Chicago. And lastly, cultural considerations and suggestions. So the first part, I'd like to introduce you a brief overview of Korean Americans in the United States. So let's look at the history. Early Korean immigrants came to the United States seeking refuge from the political turmoil and economic hardships in their homeland, just like any other immigrants for better life. The first Korean immigrants arrived in Hawaii in 1903, so it began a while ago. And they also came during the time of the Japanese annexation of Korea, which was from 1910 to 1945, when the World War II ended. And there was a Korean War, which was very traumatic to the Korean people from 1950 to 1953. And the Korean Peninsula was divided into North Korea and South Korea. And political unrest and post-war dictatorships continued in South Korea from 1963 to up till 1988. The Korean Americans in the United States did experience oppression. For example, they were subject to the Discriminatory Immigration Act, which was also called as Oriental Exclusion Act of 1924. This act banned Asian immigration to the United States, so you could only come here as non-immigrant aliens. However, in 1965, Immigration and Nationality Act abolished the quota of Asian immigrants in the United States. And this encouraged many Koreans to move, making Koreans one of the most rapidly growing immigrant groups in the United States. So let's look at more recent history of immigration. There are 1.9 million Korean Americans in the United States as of 2019, and many of them identify as South Koreans. So South Koreans immigrate to the United States for a variety of reasons now, including employment, education, and family. And the United States remains home to the largest Korean population outside of Korea. And largest Korean communities in the United States can be located in New York City and Los Angeles. If you look at the trend of the immigration from Korea to the United States grew from 1980, peaking in 2010 when it passed the 1 million mark. And then it began steadily decreasing since 2010, according to the research in 2019. So let's look at the statistics. So there are 81,340 Korean Americans in Illinois, according to the report in 2024. For many Korean residents in Illinois, it is interesting to note that Illinois is not the first place of residence in the United States for them. So many Koreans, when they first immigrate, they tend to go to the coastal cities, New York, Los Angeles, where many immigrants first come and live. And then after living there and adjusting to the American life, then they move to the Midwest. So many of the Korean Americans in the Illinois that you see will have some years of adjusting and settling down under their belt. Also, just like any other immigrants, there's a trend to move away from the city to the suburbs. So originally, K-Town was located on Lawrence Avenue, Chicago, which is around the Albany Park area. But now more Korean families are moving away from Chicago and settling down in Cook County suburbs and Lake County. Even at Hanul Family Alliance, we tend to have almost 200% more clients in the Mount Prospect office compared to the Chicago office. And another thing that we would like to know is debunking of the model minority myth. Model minority myth is literally the myth that Asian Americans are highly educated, high-income model immigrants. This perception was created and encouraged by the mainstream media since 1970s, 80s. So this portrayal was hurtful because while it makes Asian Americans look like they're doing very well, the myth actually does not acknowledge the struggles and lack of sufficient resources and care to the community. It erases complexity of diverse national origins, which is more than 20 plus Asian countries, cultural backgrounds, and challenges faced by very diverse 22 million Asian Americans in the United States. The myth was also politically used against other minority groups, justifying discriminatory policies and practices. And again, model minority myth overlooks a lot of the struggles and the need for resources to the Asian community because they're doing so well. They don't need anything. This actually means that less than 1% of philanthropic funding goes to Asian American Pacific Islander causes in the United States, according to 2021 research. So the data shows that a large number of Asian Americans lack resources for better quality of life. 1 out of 10 Asian Americans live in poverty as of 2023. And as of 2023, nearly 6 out of 10 Asian Americans in poverty are first generation immigrants. If we delve into this further, 18% of the older age 65 plus Asian Americans are income eligible for Medicaid and Medicare. And the non-elderly Asian Americans, which is younger than age 65, qualify for Medicaid too, 7.8% of them. First generation immigrants tend to be more vulnerable to social isolation. So this disparity highlights the need for culturally and linguistically informed services, resources, and care to meet the needs of the Asian American immigrants.
Now let's talk about the Korean American community in Chicago. There are many barriers to services. Especially for immigrants, language barrier is probably the most common. Based on what we have a study, 89% of Hanul Family Alliance's clients have a limited English proficiency. It can prevent the Korean immigrants from accessing resources. At this point, I want to report something that is very interesting. Korean language classified as a super hard language to learn for Americans by the US Department of State, along with Arabic, Mandarin, Chinese, Cantonese, and Japanese. I bring up this point because we can also say learning English is also very challenging for native Korean speakers. The next I want to point out about the Korean American community in Chicago is social isolation. The reasons of this social isolations are as follows. Many Korean Americans are foreign born and likely to have less community network in the United States. So they also experience more emptiness, intergenerational divide of foreign-born immigrants. First-generation immigrants dedicate much of their lives to surviving in a new country, raising and supporting their children's education and career. When their adult children move away, older Koreans are left socially isolated. Followed by various we talked about. Now, let's look at the risk factors for a Korean immigrant community in Chicagoland. According to Change in Sight assessment in 2023, the 6 biggest risk factors for Korean American in Chicagoland were: first, limited English proficiency; second, high school diploma or less; third, social isolation; fourth, being under federal poverty level; fifth, unemployment or underemployment; and finally, high level of stress. So far, we talked about the barriers, and now I would like to present about the strength of the Korean American community in Chicago and our support community system. First, resilience and strength as immigrants. Their dedication, family-focused values, and resilience have been demonstrated through their journey of settling down and thriving as a first-generation immigrants. Active support network. Religious communities such as Korean Christian churches and Buddhist temples foster a culture of helping others, offering a strong support system. Tech-savvy community. Many older Korean Americans own and use smartphones and are more interested in technology. As I mentioned about the community support system, the religious community is very important in our community. The 59% of Korean Americans identify as Christian, mostly Protestant. Along with the Filipino Americans, regular religious attendance is more common than other Asian American groups. With that being said, much of the community support is provided by religious communities. Therefore, networking with the religious leaders and communities may be very helpful.
Here are some cultural considerations and suggestions. First consideration is importance of linguistically and culturally aligned service. There is a general lack of Korean language or Korean-centered resources in Cook County. They also need service providers who can speak Korean and or are familiar with the Korean culture. Next is understand the community's fear about the APS intervention's impact. There are 2 cases. The case 1 is family breaking up. Korean immigrants think that what happens to their grandchildren if APS intervention leads to CPS intervention. And they also think that they are the only people I know in this country. It's not like I can go back to Korea. And case 2 is fear about further isolation. They know financial abuse is taking place, but their children is the only person who can take care of them. And third consideration is foreign-born immigrants of racial minorities often experience general apprehension and lack of trust in government intervention. They might think that, will they truly help or trust us when we look different or are not fluent in English? What if they misinterpret what I say? Korean immigrants are likely to be hesitant to call for help, especially government authorities or the police. And also, Korean immigrants more likely to utilize private informal sources of help, including family members, churches, and friends. And the fourth consideration is the cultural differences on perception of elder abuse. Financial abuse and emotional mistreatment are the most common form of elder abuse among Korean and Chinese immigrants. Due to the cultural norm of sharing of this asset with their family, financial abuse may be accepted and overlooked in the older generations. In the 2000 study, 45% of Korean American adults said that it is acceptable that other children may use their parents' or elders' money for themselves, as opposed to 2% of Caucasian American adults. More education, training, and awareness raising efforts are necessary. And here is the very important thing is that every Korean immigrant has their own unique needs and come from different backgrounds. And here's a suggestion based on cultural considerations. Community-based organizations like Hanul Family Alliance has the trust of the community and can help APS connect with the community in a cultural acceptable way. Please provide training and resources to community-based organizations. And also, please work with bilingual and bicultural community leaders or service providers such as Hanul Family Alliance, Hana Center, Can Win, etc. Thank you for listening to our presentation. Here are some references.